What's up, guys? We're back to another malicious compliance. Just letting you know ahead of time, this is going to be the top of the top malicious compliance stories. So some stories you may have heard before on other channels. Just letting you know ahead of time, if you hear anything familiar, just skip on ahead to the next story. Anyways, let's get in it. Number 5. I demand to be put in a seat that is able to recline. A few years ago, I was on a flight from LA to Singapore. Take 16 plus hours. I'm a tall dude, around 6'3", 190 centimeters, so I don't fit very well in economy class seats. On most planes, my knees are often very close or right up against the seat in front of me. This makes it impossible for the person in front of me to recline their seat, which usually isn't a problem once the person in front of me sees how cramped I am in those tiny seats. However, for this particular flight, the man in front of me was not having it. He tried to recline his seat, but couldn't because my legs were there. He turns around and sees what's happening and asks me something along the lines of, "Do you mind letting me put my seat back?" I respond with, "I wish I could, but I physically can't. I'll do my best to give you as much space as I can, but it won't be much." At this point, he starts to get angry and just starts pushing as hard as he can back on his seat. Needless to say, this was not particularly pleasant for me. I ask him to stop, and he says, "I'll stop when I can put my seat back." I decide I'll just wait him out. He'll eventually get tired. After about 10 to 15 minutes of this, he calls a flight attendant over and proceeds to demand a new seat. The flight attendant tells him there are no available seats and he will have to deal with it. He demands to speak to the pilot. So the flight attendant goes up front to talk to the cockpit. Keep in mind that throughout this, he is still pressing with all his might against my knees, with only short breaks to yell at the flight attendant. After a couple of minutes, the co-pilot, he wanted to speak to the pilot and wasn't happy about this, comes back and tries to explain to the man that he can't change seats because there are no other coach seats free. The man continues to demand a seat that is able to recline. "Give me an upgrade, this is unacceptable," making a scene, etc. The co-pilot finally gives in and says while looking at the man, "Sir, would you like to sit up in business class?" The man stands up and mutters something similar to, "Effing finally," to which the co-pilot responds, "Sir, sit down. I wasn't talking to you." He turns to me and repeats, "How would you like to sit in business class?" I have, to this day, never seen someone as furious as the man as I walked past him to my new business class seat, with free drinks. Number 4. Restaurant employee amuses himself, delights me and my kids. Yesterday, I decided to take my kids to an international chain restaurant. In this restaurant, the kids' meal comes with ice cream, but you have to serve yourself. That was a problem because there weren't any bowls besides the ice cream machine. So I thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask an employee for some bowls. And that's just what I did. So he turns to look at the vast array of bowls behind him. Some sauce-sized, some entree salad-sized, and many in between. And we realize that neither of us knows what size the kid's ice cream is intended to be. So he thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask a manager. And he says, "Hey boss, what do we put the kid's ice cream in?" Without turning around, the boss says, "An effing bowl, what do you think?" "Yeah, but what size of bowl?" The boss, with his imitable charm, tact, and grace, says, "Just effing give him a bowl." The employee looks back at the bowls, and then I saw him get a big grin over his face. "I apologize about that, sir. I think it's probably these ones," he says, and he hands me 2 of the largest bowls they have in the restaurant, practically giggling with glee. My children were similarly delighted. The manager walked by when we were halfway through and made a noise like a startled opossum, but said no actual words. Definitely going back there. Number 3. What do you mean I can't drive my car? I've been a mechanic my entire working life so far, and this is one of my favorite experiences. I had a customer come in complaining about a vibration. I put the vehicle on the lift and checked the front end. I found a nearly broken tie rod and a faulty rack and pinion. So basically, the passenger side front wheel was not fully secured to the steering system and would soon break and cause the wheel to be completely disconnected from the steering. I told the customer how much the repair would be and told her it was unsafe to drive. She asked me to put it back together so she could leave. I told her I could not do that because if it broke after I let her leave, I could be held liable. She started yelling and screaming about calling the cops and suing me, and how her cousin's brother knows a guy who's related to the chief of police and I'll be arrested. She calls the police and they come out. I show the officers the vehicle and they understood the safety concern. They told me to just put the car down and let her leave. I did, and even made her sign a statement declaring crucial safety repairs. She left with the most "ha told you so" smug grin on her face, until she left the property, got pulled over, and her car impounded. They also gave her a ticket for reckless driving. I was so happy seeing her car get towed. Edit for clarification. The cops told her it was against the law to drive it. The state laws back then allowed me to do exactly what I did. I offered to discount the price of the repair and take payments. She still refused. And I don't care how well versed you think you are in the law, you don't know when or where this took place. Number 2. I don't care if he's dead, put him on the phone. I was sent here on a recommendation from another sub with a story you guys might like. First time poster, on mobile, etc. TLDR at the bottom. My father died on Father's Day 2012. He was divorced and living alone, and I'm an only child. So that means that I had to wrap up all of his affairs. This story centers around us trying to get his utilities canceled. I call in to see what we had to do to get them canceled. The lady I spoke with on the phone said to send in his certified death certificate. I sent in a certified copy of his death certificate the next day. The next month, got another bill. I called again, and a new woman answered. She said that because I wasn't on the account, that she had to speak with the account holder. I informed her that the account holder was dead, but she wouldn't budge. I had to make an appointment with a supervisor so she could speak to him herself in person. I showed up with the Board of Public Utilities with another death certificate and his ashes in the clear bag that they returned his remains in. I plopped them down on the center of her desk and said, when she talked to him, to tell him that I loved him for me. The woman went pale, flew out of her chair, and called the cops. When they showed up, she claimed that I had assaulted her. And yes, my dad's remains were still sitting in the middle of her desk with the death certificate. The cops questioned me as to why I would do that. I told them the story. The supervisor's boss was called in, and they all stepped away from the desk for a private meeting. While they were talking, the cops came over to talk to me. They said I shouldn't have taken human remains out in public, but there was no laws that were broken. I said that I agreed with them, that it was extreme, but she insisted to speak with him in person. By then, they were done talking between themselves. The supervisor's boss kissed up to me and got it taken care of. But the story isn't over yet. I had to call back a few days later to get utilities back to the house in my name. When the person on the phone saw the address and my name, I was immediately put on hold. The supervisor's boss that finally helped me got on the phone. She sucked up to me and waived all the fees that came with setting up utilities. Just as the call was ending, she informed me that she was again so sorry for the employee's lack of compassion. She said that the employee was terminated, and again, she is so very sorry. And finally, it's time for number 1. My neighbors wanted to call a professional to mark their property line. My parents agreed. This was a long time ago, but I remember it clearly. We moved into a community with tight space in between our house and our neighbors, and we didn't like them being able to see into our kitchen. We put up a bunch of plants costing thousands, but my parents thought it would be worth it. A week later, my parents awoke to the plants completely chopped down. My father was furious and marched down to the neighbor's house. He told my father the plants were on his property line, therefore he had total right to take them down. He warned that if anything were to go on his property again, he would report us to the authorities immediately. Later that day, my father called the company that put in the plants, and with a warranty we could have them replaced next week for no charge. We made sure there was no way it was on our neighbor's property. However, a few days later, we caught him chopping them down at 2 a.m. We called the police upon obstruction of property, and after a chat with my neighbor, he decided to call a professional and mark his property line. My father agreed. A few days later, I got home to find orange tape in my neighbor's yard. Apparently, his fence was 11 feet over our property line. We watched as he took his fence down, completely furious. Within the next month, we were enjoying our new space and privacy in our backyard, and my neighbor ended up losing 1/4 of his backyard. My neighbor ended up having to pay almost $10,000 for the destruction of our property, and we got to plant our plants again. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, consider subscribing. And if you really liked it, maybe give it a thumbs up and a share. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.